This is a goldsmithing technique so precise that for nearly 2,000 years, nobody on Earth could fully reproduce it. Etruscan granulation means fusing microscopic spheres of gold onto a gold surface. Some of those spheres are smaller than a millimeter. There's no solder, no visible seam. Central Italian goldsmiths perfected this between roughly 700 and 200 BC. Then it vanished from Europe for 18 centuries. The answer to how it worked didn't come from an ancient text. It didn't come from a lucky translation either. It came from a chemical reaction nobody could see happening, and it took nearly 200 years of failed guesses to find it. We'll get to the exact moment that cracked it. First, you need to understand why this problem broke so many people who tried to solve it. Ordinary metal joining uses solder, a filler metal that melts at a lower temperature than the pieces it's joining. Solder always leaves a trace, a small ring of extra material around each joint. Etruscan granulation leaves nothing. Look at it under magnification, and each gold sphere looks like it grew directly out of the surface beneath it. That missing joint is the whole mystery, and it's why museums spent the better part of 2 centuries calling this a lost art. The modern story of granulation starts in 1836, outside the town of Cerveteri. An archpriest named Alessandro Regolini and a general named Vincenzo Galassi broke into a tomb that had sat undisturbed since the 7th century BC. Inside, they found a woman buried with a gold pectoral 42 centimeters across and a ceremonial fibula nearly 30 centimeters long, covered in 5 lions and 50 individually granulated ducks arranged in 7 precise rows. Someone fused every one of those grains by hand, with no idea their work would still be intact 26 centuries later. That fibula still sits on display today in the Vatican's Gregorian Etruscan Museum, in the room built specifically to house what came out of that tomb. Word of the discovery reached Rome fast, and it reached a jeweler named Fortunato Pio Castellani, whose shop sat next to the Trevi fountain. Castellani studied the excavated pieces closely, and he got obsessed. He couldn't replicate the ancient process because nobody in 1836 understood the chemistry behind it. So he and his sons, Alessandro and Augusto, built a close imitation using conventional soldering and marketed as archaeological jewelry. It sold to a steady stream of wealthy tourists passing his door every day. And here's the part almost nobody mentions, that imitation jewelry is now valuable enough to sit in major museum collections in its own right, a few rooms away from the originals it was built to copy. Most visitors can't tell the difference by eye. The forgeries became artifacts, but the Castellanis never solved the actual puzzle. What they built looked right under normal light and fooled almost everyone. Put it under a loupe though, and the difference jumps out. Their joints carry the telltale ring that solder always leaves. The Etruscan originals have none. Jewelers kept guessing through the rest of the 19th century and well into the 20th, and they kept failing the same way. A goldsmith named H.A.P., a goldsmith named 8A Littledale presented research that drew serious attention from other metalworkers experimenting with colloidal soldering. Decades later, a jewelry historian named Joachim Wolters proposed something more specific. The finest, dust-grain Etruscan work appeared right around the same time as the invention of the iron file, which may have let goldsmiths file coarse gold into filings of a consistent size, then melt those filings in a consistent size, then melt those filings in layers of powdered charcoal to form sphere. Even the Renaissance goldsmith Benvenuto Cellini wrote about pouring molten gold into charcoal powder to make small spheres 300 years before Castellani, and he admitted in his own notebooks that he had no reliable way to control what size came out. None of these people had the wrong ingredients. They were just missing one number. The real answer turned out to be chemical, and it only came together once modern instruments could measure what the eye alone never could. Etruscan gold was extremely pure, often exceeding 99%. Pure gold melts at 1063 degrees Celsius, but introduce a tiny amount of copper right at the point where a grain touches the surface, and a eutectic reaction kicks in. That copper and gold form a localized alloy with a melting point of 889 degrees, well below the melting point of the gold around it. The roll piece into that narrow window, and the joint fuses while everything else, including the grain itself, stays completely solid. Now stop and think about what that actually took in practice, because this is where the story stops being about chemistry and starts being about a person. A goldsmith working on a piece with hundreds, sometimes thousands of individual grains had to hit that same narrow temperature window over and over on every single joint, using nothing but the color of the glowing metal as a guide. There was no thermometer. There was no second attempt. One overheated joint could melt a grain into a shapeless blob or ruin the whole piece. Gold was too valuable to waste on practice runs, which means every successful joint on a finished fibula represents someone who'd already made every possible mistake somewhere else on a piece history never recorded. On gold, nobody thought was worth saving. That precision is also why the word lost is a little misleading. The finished jewelry never disappeared. It sat in tombs the whole time, fully intact, fully visible, waiting to be dug up. What disappeared was the specific, practiced skill of a goldsmith who'd spent years at a single workbench, reading temperature by eye, training their hands to do something no written record fully explained. In the 1940s, an American goldsmith named John Paul Miller started working out his own version of the process through direct trial and error, with no ancient manual to follow, and spent decades refining it into a personal practice. What he rebuilt wasn't a secret formula. It was a skill anyone could theoretically learn, given enough time, enough failed attempts, and enough gold they were willing to lose. 2,000 years separate the goldsmith who made the Regolini-Galassi fibula from the museum visitor looking at it through glass today. The chemistry connecting them has finally been explained, down to the exact degree. The particular hands that first mastered it, the sequence of failures that got them there, and the workshop culture that made that kind of narrow, obsessive mastery worth an entire working life. All of that is still out of reach, and it always will be. The gold still catches the light exactly the way it did the day it was fused. What's missing isn't a formula anymore. It's the person who knew, without needing to measure, exactly when the metal was ready.